Life Audio.
But if you ask yourself that question, what would it take to take your $200K business and make it a $2 million business? What happens is you start asking yourself different questions, because what it takes to get to 400K is likely more of what you're doing, but it's just the more, faster, more efficient. And that kind of feels like the rat race often.
Are you tired of constantly telling yourself, I shouldn't feel this way? Yet so many of us guilt trip or gaslight ourselves instead of working on our way through those complicated feelings. You should be a good friend, even though you feel hurt by past betrayals. You should be content, even though you feel lonely or unfulfilled. We've all been there, haven't we? But what if there was a way to reset these toxic mental tapes that sabotage our days? In her groundbreaking new book, I Shouldn't Feel This Way, Dr. Allison Cook encourages you to not just silence those thoughts, but actually come face to face with them. You can find emotional freedom. Learn to see through the haze of conflicted feelings and move forward in your life with confidence. Pairing biblically sound principles with over 20 years of research and clinical practice, licensed therapist and best-selling author, Dr. Allison Cook guides you through a practical 3-step process to find the freedom you crave. Change starts when you finally stop beating yourself up for the way you feel and say, you know what? I do feel this way, and I can finally do something about it. Take the first step towards clarity and peace today with I Shouldn't Feel This Way by Dr. Allison Cook. Available now wherever books are sold. Hello and welcome to the Encourager Podcast, where we have encouraging conversations to help you joyfully harmonize your home and work life. I'm your host, Rebecca Scott. I'm a wife, mother, designer, coach, and author. I'm here to help encourage and empower you to confidently make decisions that work for you and your stage of life, whatever that might be. Hello, Encouragers. On this week's podcast, I've got a special guest that I think you're going to glean so much practical information. But also today we're going to talk a little bit about a mindset shift that I think is really going to challenge us and help us in both our businesses and also our home lives as well. Welcome my guest, John Meyer. Hello. Wait.
Hey, how are you,
We
Rebecca?
might have to do that over. Is it John Meyer or Meyer?
You said it right. The reason why I use my T in my social handles, and if you Google John Meyer, Google will say, did you mean John Mayer? And I always say, well, my body is a wonderland, but no, that's not what I meant.
Okay, so that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for all the background. Okay.
For all the background. More than you cared to know.
Yep. Mm-hmm. John is a husband, a dad, an entrepreneur, and a runner, which we haven't even talked about that. Actually, we did open up in our preview to chat about our thoughts as parents for track season. It's a lot. Mm-hmm. So I will just follow us on social media to find out all of my talks about track because it's a whole
hot takes on track.
It's a whole nother animal. But I want you to tell us first a little bit of the background for our listeners, because you are up to your third company now.
There's probably even more if you count the failed ones.
Right. Yep. Moving on, right? So tell us a little bit about your first one and then how the next one came and the next one, because I think that background is valid for us to understand how you got to this mindset.
Yeah, you bet. So I'm a Brookings kid, grew up in South Dakota, and went away to college. I majored in communications, which I always say is short for I don't know what I want to do with my life. You know, I was a theater kid, but I was also a track kid and debate and a small town, did all the things. Mm-hmm. When I graduated from a liberal arts school with a communications degree, it's what did I really learn? I can remember 3 things. But then what I reflected on, it was we wrote a lot of papers, we gave a lot of presentations, and we worked in groups of people. And then when I became a CEO years later, it was what did I do? I wrote a lot of emails.
Yes. I
gave a lot of presentations, internally or externally. And I certainly worked with groups of people. And so I realized I got a lot of repetition and got a lot of at-bats, to kind of use the baseball analogy. And so I graduated from college, went up to Minneapolis to do corporate. I worked for a big consulting company called Accenture. I did a lot of pivot tables and spreadsheets and kind of quickly learned I'm this is I thought I was making $50,000. I was 23 years old. I was life is good. And then I realized what they were billing me out for. And I was oh, this is how this game works. Yep. I just felt like corporate wasn't for me. Called me a millennial. I felt like kind of a cog in the wheel. And so I remember calling my dad in Brookings and saying I think I want to quit. And he said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. We'll figure something out. We'll create something. And he said, maybe stick it out a year, which now as a dad myself, I'm always that's the most dad thing to say. It's stick it out for a year. We made it 11 months. I made it 11 months. And then my older brother, Scott, was back home in Brookings and found a pamphlet. And it was a grant, a South Dakota grant through the Governor's Office of Economic Development during the Rounds administration. And it was 15 grand. And the 2 rules were you had to, 1, start your business in South Dakota, and 2, it had to involve technology.
Love it.
And so we kind of, over the weekend, kind of whiteboarded an idea of like, this is 2009. And we realized, I don't think South Dakota businesses realize what's coming with this social media thing. Facebook had just sort of left college campuses. It was only for college kids at the time. There was this new thing called Twitter. We were telling folks like, hey, you can create content on YouTube. It's the number 2 search engine. And so the idea was like, we're going to come back home and teach South Dakota businesses about social media. Decent idea, bad execution. Like we were bad entrepreneurs. We moved back in 2009. We started a company called 9 Clouds. We would drive to Brookings to, if you're familiar with like the Ram Pub, a good old bar restaurant in downtown Brookings. We'd take a little picture on like, it wasn't even iPhones then, like a little smartphone, upload it to Facebook, and it'd be like $1 off margaritas that Thursday or something. They'd give us like a free beer. We'd stop at my parents' house for dinner, drive back home. We did that every week for $200 a month. We were probably losing money on just the gas alone. But, so it took us a while to kind of figure out how to be entrepreneurs. The one thing we did well was like people had heard of us. It was like, oh, it's those social media brothers. Like talk to them.
Okay.
And so the reason I tell that story is that informed the second company, which was Lemonly. And I did that for a decade. And Amy, my business partner, and I asked ourselves, like, she was our first employee at 9 Clouds. What if we just did one thing really well? Because at 9 Clouds, we would do sort of anything digital as long as it was like legal and you'd pay us, we would do it. And that works to like a scrappiness, but it isn't great for like a clarity. Like what are we great at? What is our superpower? And so that was the idea with Lemonly. Like, let's be the world's best at infographics, telling stories through pictures. And then did that for a decade. So we did that for 10 years, worked with, Marriott, Netflix, Google, Major League Baseball, grew to about 20 employees. And then in 21, Amy and I sold that business. So
that's amazing.
She's still working there today. And so that became kind of my chapter 2. And then in 2022, I was like, what do I want to do when I grow up? And I'm sure you've probably asked yourself that question. I feel like you always reinvent yourself, which I admire. 2022 was like the hardest year for me of my life, which I don't talk about that a whole lot because people are like, wait, you got a big check to like quit your job and now you're complaining that it's a hard. I would say my door is like yellow. Our front door at our house is yellow. Like I was like trying to live the brand of Lemonly, right? Like Lemonly was me and I was Lemonly. And then all of a sudden you weren't that and had to kind of reinvent who you would become and eventually settled in on coaching. Yeah. So now I coach entrepreneurs to become sort of the best version of themselves.
Okay, if you can share, and this is a little vulnerable and off of what I pre-interviewed our thing is, you said, first of all, guys, he goes over it, and so I will announce it again. You worked with gargantuan companies. Gargantuan. Built it up to 20 employees, not contractors, 20 employees. I know what that's like because I have payroll as well. So I'm thinking, oh my goodness. So was there a moment in 2022 where you're like, nope, I can't do this? Was it more of a like identity crisis as far as like, this can't determine my whole life? Was it the third child came along and you're like, turns out I don't know their name anymore? Like, what was the moment where you're like, I have to switch gears?
Yeah, I read a book. I was on a plane in 2019. I read a book called The Messy Marketplace, and it's 7 reasons why you might sell a company. And those reasons are some of it you would think of, like money, time, family, health. And one of the chapters was you want to wake up and think about something else. And I remember reading that book and being like, that's me. Like somebody gave me permission to like, it's okay to sell your business because you want to wake up and think about something else. Like business was good. We grew in COVID year, not a lot, but like COVID year was, small growth, which is a win. I loved my team. I still like dearly miss my team, but I just felt like I've sold thousands of infographics. Part of what made us special was we were so focused, but then it's like, I've done this, right? And as an entrepreneur, for better or worse, we sort of get shiny object syndrome. And I thought, and you hit it on the nail too, which is like, I didn't want to, as much as I loved being the Lemonly guy, I didn't want to only be the Lemonly guy, right? Yeah. There's sort of this chip on our shoulder as entrepreneurs where it's like, I wanted to prove that we didn't just get lucky, right time, right place, right? That like, maybe I could build this again. But I had a lot of days in 2022 where I had to repeat that to myself. Like, why did I did this? Why? I didn't ever have a regret of not selling, but I certainly had second thoughts. Like, did I make the right decision?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Because I think it's really really advantageous for us to always have an examples of where it was and what they were sitting. And it's really interesting how many times I've gotten a few opportunities to ask that question. They could pinpoint it. I was on a plane and it was the sixth reason. And I was like, whoa, that's it. Which is kind of like, as you know, from podcasting, why we podcast. Because they could listen to 90% of our episodes and maybe not take that many things away, but there'll be one sentence that they come to me at a show and they say, Becca, this sentence. And then I'm like, I don't remember it. It probably wasn't me. It was God speaking to you directly, but I'm really glad it made the difference.
Well, I know you have a lot of busy parents that listen, and that 2022 year, my daughter Margot started kindergarten. Okay. And every day I was at pickup, I did pickup and drop off. Yeah. And there were days where I was like, man, parenting, I still feel parenting. Like, I feel like being a CEO is easier than being a parent.
Of course.
Like Monday mornings at Lemonly would come and be like, thank God, I know how to do this. The weekend was like just survival. So there are times I'm sitting there like in the pickup line in kindergarten, and I'm like, is this where I'm supposed to be? And then you realize this is the only time it will ever be, right? It's like she will only ever be a kindergartner, and I got to pick her up every day. And she was probably what helped me get through that year, like picking up my daughter and feeling like I had some purpose.
The consistency of the mundane is such a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Well
People
said.
always laugh at me because I still say I like doing the dishes. I actually don't like doing dishes. As a kid, they had to convince me. But as an adult, I'm like, I just know how to do this. And it feels like a bubble bath. And I can usually convince a kiddo to sit next to me while he dries the dishes, or she. And I'm like, and that's just what it is. It could be complete chaos around me, but I'm like, this is mundane, but this I know how to do. And it feels rhythmic and regular. And yeah. Are you tired of constantly telling yourself, I shouldn't feel this way? Yet so many of us guilt trip or gaslight ourselves instead of working on our way through those complicated feelings. You should be a good friend, even though you feel hurt by past betrayals. You should be content, even though you feel lonely or unfulfilled. We've all been there, haven't we? But what if there was a way to reset these toxic mental tapes that sabotage our days? In her groundbreaking new book, I Shouldn't Feel This Way, Dr. Allison Cook encourages you to not just silence those thoughts, but actually come face to face with them. You can find emotional freedom. Learn to see through the haze of conflicted feelings and move forward in your life with confidence. Pairing biblically sound principles with over 20 years of research and clinical practice, licensed therapist and best-selling author, Dr. Allison Cook guides you through a practical 3-step process to find the freedom you crave. Change starts when you finally stop beating yourself up for the way you feel and say, you know what? I do feel this way, and I can finally do something about it. Take the first step towards clarity and peace today with I Shouldn't Feel This Way by Dr. Allison Cook. Available now wherever books are sold. And now your current company, you are coaching.
Yeah. Yep. So it's called Lead More. And I'll kind of like, I've a lot of my career is just kind of letting a thread come and then pulling on the thread and sort of see where it takes me. That fall of 22, and I felt kind of lost, a friend up in North Dakota who ran an agency was like, have you ever thought about coaching? And the answer was no, I hadn't, but I did have a coach myself. I really believe in the power of coaches. Coaches help you. They ask questions. They help you. They may not give you all the answers, but you realize that some of the answers you had inside of you. And so I said, yeah, maybe I'll try that. And so for about 4 or 6 months, I did it sort of undercover. I wasn't really ready to be like, I'm a coach, because there is this like Instagram life coach. There's this like, I don't know, it felt a little cringy at first for me. I wasn't ready to like own the title. And then after some, like everything, even people who you view as like super successful, like they're often making it up as they go too. I realized after about 6 months, it's like, yeah, I think I can do this. Like I got a few of my clients got some wins, and I launched the business as Lead More. And now I'm still sort of like figuring out who my ideal customer is, because you can coach a lot of people. But today what I say is I help entrepreneurs who go from solo to CEO. Yeah. And so you're a solopreneur, you wear all the hats. Your business you don't ever take a vacation. The whole thing just stops if you ever do take a vacation.
Right.
And maybe you're not best at everything. Maybe you shouldn't wear all the hats. And so going to CEO doesn't necessarily mean you have to have the 20 employees and a huge salary, but it could mean like maybe a part-time employee, maybe a VA, maybe you work with other contractors and agencies to sort of hand off the things you don't want to do. And so really it's going CEO is more of a mindset than anything. And I think that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yes, I love it. Okay, so Thank you for all the background, because again, it does help line up. And first of all, isn't it funny that it still robs you, even if you've done something for 20 years? You're like, I don't know that I would say I'm a designer. And I'm like, come on, Becca, you've made how many products? No, I do not have the certification, you guys, but I make a darn good purse. So
when somebody tells me that they have imposter syndrome, I'm like, guess what? You and everybody else in the world, right? There's maybe like 5 people that don't.
I know, they're like, take this quiz to find out if you have it. I'm like, what? That's a dumb quiz. Don't take it, because I guarantee you have it. Okay, so we started talking about the mindset shift as you're going from possibly solo entrepreneur and then maybe becoming CEO. So clearly some of your coaching, a lot of your coaching involves just this mindset switch and sometimes like you said, there's a lot of people talking on Instagram about mindset. I'm like, be careful, like what you're saying. Do you have evidence and experience of this shift for yourself personally? So talk to us about this one. When you are trying to scale your business, and not even like scaling to selling, just like, okay, I'm going to make 10 versus making 2. You have an exercise that you walk people through. That's why it is easier to 10x something versus 2x it. And this I'm super interested in, because lately it kind of depends on how far you are in your Instagram scroll, but sometimes it's like the anti-hustle culture. And then for a hot minute in there, I bet it lasted for a decade. It was all like the 4-hour work week and how to just, scale, or batch. So I'm really interested to find out about this mindset exercise. Tell us about why it's easier to 10x something versus 2x.
I think I had a lot of thoughts on this topic already in my head. And then I read a book called this. It's called 10X is Easier Than 2X. I think it's Darren Hardy.
Oh, I love him.
Dan Sullivan. Dan Sullivan is this longtime old school coach. Okay. And then Darren Hardy's was a kind of viral medium blogger, writer guy. And they kind of joined the forces together and wrote this book. It was like when you have a thought, you just hadn't quite articulated it. And then you read it and you're like, that's what I'm like, bingo, like light bulb. And so I read that book and I just really thought that was fascinating. And I think a lot of what I like to, if I give a talk or think about, is I love South Dakota. I'm from South Dakota, and there's so much, we have so many superpowers, I think, by being Midwesterners, right? Whether it be the gift of gab and small talk, and I could talk about the weather for an hour, like the sort of sense of community where someone moves in down the block and you bring cookies and you bring, you welcome them to the neighborhood. But that also, like everything, a lot of strengths can also have some weaknesses. And I think one of the things is we have a lot of limiting beliefs as maybe upper humble Midwesterners, right? This I always like to say is like, you're a coach, that your business will never be worth more than you ever think you deserve. Like you'll never make $1 more than you believe you deserve. And so there's what a lot of the folks, when I'm in that solopreneur phase, it's like, well, I got to $100,000. Great. Congratulations. Now what? And they're like, oh, nothing else. Like I got where I want to be. I'm like, I challenged that thought. I'm like, well, why? Like, what if you could grow your business and have employees and help change other people's lives? And well, I don't want to mess that up, or I don't want to screw that up, and I don't want the pressure. And so I think those are often sort of limiting beliefs. And I like the line, like, new levels, new devils, right? So at every level, there's another devil you have to face, like change and challenge and adversity. That's inevitable. It's just a matter of like, how do you sort of shed your old identity to become the new person at the next level? And so I'm not even saying it's all about like money, that you just have to 10x your business, but you do have to think 10x your life. Like that should be the goal, like to figure out how to level up and become the new person. Like if I haven't seen you for a while, I want to say, it's been 6-12 months, like, hey, Becca, I'm John Meyer. Allow me to reintroduce myself, right? Like you haven't met me in a while because I'm a new person now. And in many ways, we went through this, like in COVID, it's like, oh, I haven't seen you for 2 years, and now you have a beard, or now you seem taller, or, like people entered new careers, or people like reshifted their priorities, which I thought was really interesting. So the main thesis of the book is that like, it's actually easier to 10x than 2x. And that doesn't have to just mean I'm at 200K, now I have to go to 2 million versus 400K. But if you ask yourself that question, what would it take to take your 200K business and make it a $2 million business? What happens is you start asking yourself different questions, because what it takes to get to 400K is likely more of what you're doing, but it's just the more, faster, more efficient. So it's to your point about the batch, the efficiency, the scale. And that kind of feels like the rat race often. Whereas like let's use you as an example. If you thought, now I want to go from 200K to 2 million, you can't just go to craft fairs and like, county fairs to sell bags. You got to think, I better get online. I better create some scale. Maybe I should create a course on how other people can create bags. Like, how could I make money when I sleep? So this 10X idea, you have like your 4 freedoms, he says, are time, money, relationship, and purpose. And so it's like, how do I 10X my time? Well, the only way we all get 24 hours. So that's like, I'm a big proponent of hiring a VA. Yes. Like a VA essentially allows you to clone yourself. I do this exercise with my coaching clients I call the energy audit. So you draw a line down the center of a paper, plus on one side and minus on the other. And the plus is like, write down all the things that give you energy. So for you, like it could even be doing the dishes, right? Or probably doing a podcast. But then write all the things that minus. Like I can tell you for me, it was like, in the early days of Nine Clouds, doing the books. Like I reconciled the QuickBooks and I just dreaded it, right? And I was always 6 months behind, 90% sure it wasn't accurate. Like, and just really dreaded that. And so giving the entrepreneurs permission to do more of the plus and more and less of the minus, right? Like, and that's another maybe Midwest fault. It's like, well, I've got to mow my lawn because my grass has to look green and it's my responsibility. Right. It's like, there might be a kid down the street who all he wants to do is mow your lawn for like 15, 20 bucks.
Yes.
Like, just let him do it.
Yes. Permission to let him do it. Absolutely.
That's a lot of these limiting beliefs and trying to kind of like push up against those, see where somebody gets a little uncomfortable and then sort of ask those challenging questions.
So I did do this in several different ways, and it did significantly help my bottom line as far as the business side of things. And it actually helped my family as well. So even if, like John gave permission there, even if you're at 50, even if you're 20K, 50K, doesn't matter, guys, whatever the amount is, think about what happens if I take this to 10X, because it will challenge the things that you are currently doing as far as like, okay, this works for right now. This is a Band-Aid for right now. I'm going to give an example here. This is a Band-Aid for right now, but it won't work if we're at 10X. So anything that I introduced to my website as far as the purse brand was like, okay, I'll take it down to this. If I have to make 2 purses for the week, let's say I'm only making 2 purses. Do you know how long it takes me to take those 2 purses? Like 20 hours, because I am used to sewing more of them. But if we like have an off week where there's only like 2 that are stock, I just put it off and put it off and put it off.
Yeah.
So that's part of it too. Like part of that mindset is like, it's easier to do a group of something than it is to do one-offs. And listen, you guys, I make a living at doing custom pieces, and I have still managed to make sure that I manufacture them in a batched way. So anyways, it always takes longer to do something at 2X than it does for 10X, because you realize the volume, whether that is actually a monetary volume or a production volume or a mindset volume, you're going to take it a little bit elevated look at it to make sure that you can complete it when you're thinking of it at 10X versus 2X. Yeah. And so that being said, what I started doing was like, I asked everybody on my team, my shipping gal, my executive assistant, and my social media gal, I'm like, okay, what you're currently doing, I don't think any of us are doing anything wrong. This works. But let's say overnight, our email list grows to 100K. Dear Father in heaven, please make that happen. Okay, let's just say that was the scenario. What would we do different? And immediately each one of them had an answer. Like, that would require me shipping. Like, let's say we can still follow our same formula. If we sent this email out, the open rate would be this, the click-through rate would be this, the orders would be this, which, by the way, that can be tracked, and you can find some data on it. It's a little bit shaky in retail, but you can find some data. She would go, whoa, I'm going to need to come out 3 days a week to ship. And then that triggered my assistant to be like, ooh, our supplies would need to change a little bit.
Yeah.
And the social media gal was like, I might need to really understand the data about what they want to hear the most about if those are new customers. And so even just explaining it for yourself is like, well, what would this look like at 10X allows you to change your current 2X situation to just get beyond the limiting beliefs. And it's just a fun exercise to play, because that hasn't happened yet, guys, but I'm praying that we get an overnight 100K email list or whatever. It just helps.
Well, that's the myth of like the overnight success, right? Like I really, of course, you're going to be, what did you say, 2006 you started? You're going to be the 20-year overnight success, right? And you will have 100,000 emails. Like, I guarantee it. Like, I really believe in this like snowball effect where it's like, it's small until all of a sudden it's big, right? And so asking yourself those questions now are important, because I'm guessing you also would have to like lay out your workstation differently, and like where do you put the materials, and you ask better questions, get better answers. And I think to go 2x, we kind of just are relying on momentum, maybe like just natural speed, and more customers will come. And I always like to say, like, show up like a professional. Like, let's play at the pro level, and pro level will make you think 10x, because this is just that fighting that South Dakotan, I guess, again, where we're like, well, this is good enough. Like, it's like, well, would the pros be good? Like, would LeBron James be like good enough with his off-season training routine, or So I just think, why don't you want to be a pro? Like, show up as a pro. Like, I love sports analogies, because I think sports is really good for like a little microcosm of business or life, and we can kind of test it and repeatable, just like any good scientist would like. And so it's just like, you want to run a pro team, you want to run a pro company, like we all should try to get better. And that's how I think of 10x.
And I also think too, like, so when I went through this period of thinking through, I actually didn't realize it. I think I did realize it at the time. I had read the book by Mike Michalowicz's Fix This Next.
Oh, and so, okay. I haven't read that one, but I've read, I like the pumpkin plan he has.
I haven't read that one, but I've read several of his. And I knew that from my customer's point of view, when I was asking my team, like, okay, if we 10x this, what would look different? I knew I had to have a better website. So then we went down, like, how can we make this a better website? We didn't switch websites or anything like that. Actually, we did. We did. We walked down, 2020, we switched websites, because I was like, it's not functioning like it needs to, and it's not giving me the data that I need to think 10x. But here's what I want to say, John. You probably don't know this, but it's going to be written on my gravestone that she 1%ed it. So that being said, and the listeners are very familiar, and they're going, wait, Becca, you always say 1%. I do. But even thinking like 10x, I can break it down into 1% changes that allows me to get to the 10x things, because all of them start with just one teeny tiny step. So after saying that 10x thing and speaking with my shipping gal, it was like, okay, we don't need you 3 days a week just yet. We need you 2 days, but are we being as efficient as possible with this amazing customer right now? How can we 1% it? So we went to handwritten notes. Like, okay, that was a 1% effort that had a 10x return, because that customer was like, oh my gosh, this is someone's handwriting. Like, this is from Nicole. This is amazing. And so you can still, listeners, if you're like, I don't know, it seems intimidating because we have that little Midwest, like, still remain humble. Do. But have it in an amazing 10x confidence. And you can do that at 1%. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're like a vision board person or like a goal setter, or whatever method you choose. I think what you're saying is exactly right. It's like, here's the 10x vision in the future. I'm going to 1% my way there. Yep. But also, like, think of the people you admire, respect, the books you read. It's like, I want to follow people who are 10xing, because I want to work for someone who wants to 10x. Like, the hardest thing I always felt like in a 20-person company is like, how do I create more seats so that everybody can grow? Because, like they always say people leave, managers, not jobs. But they also leave companies when they just don't feel like there's any more space to grow. Like, I've hit my ceiling, right? And so if I want to be even a social media gal or an assistant for Becca Scott, I'm excited, because I think we're going somewhere. Like, I see the vision. We may not be there now, and we got to 1% our way there. But I know you have a vision for what like the empire looks like. And I can start to think about where I fit into that empire. And that's exciting.
Yes, I was so excited. How could we apply this? Let's just do this out loud together. How could we apply this to more of our home life? And like thinking 10x instead of 2x.
I'm a big advocate. So like I said, I believe in coaching. Yes. I am a coach, but guess what? I also have a coach. And so my coach, Dan Martell, wrote this book called Buy Back Your Time. And one of the things he talks about is what's your buyback rate? What's your hourly rate? Or what I always like to describe it as like $10, $100, or $1,000 task. And so I remember at Lemonly, we banked, our bank was across the street. So that was at least efficient. But I loved taking checks to the bank in the early days of entrepreneur. Like I was like,
so true.
Like you just feel like I'm putting it in the bank. I'm making money. I feel rewarded. Well, guess what? That's like a $10 task. Because if I could have a sales call with a potential client at Lemon, like you said, big companies, that's at minimum $1,000, probably a $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 sales call. So where should I be spending my time? Probably on that sales call, right? And so that was why we were like, let's hire an office manager, an executive assistant. And like I bought back my time creating this sort of trade. And so to bring this around, everything that we just described in business, you can apply to home.
100%.
Right? So one exercise that I did with Paige is called the preloaded year. And I have a template for this if anybody wants it. It's just a calendar like written out kind of horizontally. So like January, February, March. And it's the classic example of like the big rocks, the pebbles, and the sand. And you know the jar analogy where if you put the sand in first and then the pebbles, the rocks won't fit. But if you go backwards, if you do the big rocks, then the pebbles, the sand's just going to kind of fit everywhere in. So you should treat that as like your home calendar. What's your big rocks for the year? Like we know as a family, we try to take a trip each quarter. And sometimes it's just like we're going to go to Omaha to the zoo before school starts. Or we went to Disney World in Q1 to January with the girls. And so it's like we know those are our big rocks. Let's plan a trip. Let's make sure we force ourselves to take a family trip. And then maybe the pebbles would be like date night or like the things that you want to get into your home life and really prioritize. Then, of course, the sand is going to be, oh, there's a track meet tomorrow, or we got to get to church, or, you know, like we got play practice tonight. You know, that's all going to happen. And so I think thinking that mindset, sort of this buy back your time approach, letting the boy down the street mow your lawn. You know, I even think I laugh at people who, you know, I'm probably not a big physical materials person when it comes to thinking about the things that I want in life. But I either want to buy like experiences or I want to buy my time. Yeah. And so like, I don't know what the level is yet. I haven't figured it out. But like the thing I probably crave more than anything is like a personal chef. And I think it's actually not as far out as we think, right? Because like, imagine someone came to your house, shopped, and again, some people might love getting groceries, just like you love doing dishes. Yeah. I don't particularly, but I try to eat healthy. And if I told someone like, could you make me 3 meals a week on like a Sunday or a Monday night, I'll pay you. And then I know I'm going to eat healthy. It's going to hit like the macros or whatever my fitness goals are. And it's planned. And like that to me is sort of a 10X mindset on the home front because I want to either buy back my time to grow my business or spend time with my kids. That's probably about it. So, you know, and so like those are the trades.
That's my scenario too, is like I have a lot of good friends that are really good at the batching of meals. My little tiny things that I do to like 10X thing is because I would just want to spend more time being with them and less doing because my entire life is doing. And so I'm working on my own mindset of like why I am obsessed with productivity. It would be very difficult to say that you can be productive with your kiddos and like getting more things done. It's very like jarring. And I have to record a whole podcast on this one time, but one of my kiddos said to me, "I'm sorry, mommy, I'm wasting your time." Gut check, sob fest, you guys. I'm still unraveling. That was a couple years ago. They have not said it since, but I do need to talk to you guys about how that went and how I started to unravel that. Anyways, so I think there is ways, though, that now I look at things like, well, if I do go ahead and make 2 casserole pans versus 1 casserole pan, that means I just stick it in the oven. And when they get home from school, I'm just sitting with them while they have their snack instead of also making the casserole for that night. And so it's just that like idea, if I could 10X my time with them, if I could 10X my amount of absorption of experiences with them versus just like the little one-offs, what would that look like? And so I think that's a way that you can apply it into your home life. Same thing too, like you said with chores. Like guys, there is so many cool apps and services and neighborly kids that want jobs. So please, if it's a fit budget wise and time wise, they are worth it 1,000% to start looking at how can I like 10X what the mundane is of life to offer someone else an opportunity or to just make it so you can spend more time with your kiddos. For sure, start exploring them.
Yeah. And we're talking here about like tactical things and like kind of by, you know, an hourly rate versus creating leverage and margin. And those are all good examples. But I think if anything, what I would love to leave is like the permission to do it your way, right? Like I think as a fairly young parent, but like kind of like, we're at that age where we're now established and kind of like we're building our family and our lifestyle. And then what do? We start to play like the comparison game of like, are we doing it the right way? Or like, are kids being successful enough? Or are we making enough money? Is our house big enough? What type of car do we, it's like, do it your way. Like there's no right way there's no one single right way to like raise your family. So if you're listening to this, it's like, if anything, I would give you the permission, because when someone would say, you don't mow your own lawn, right? Or like, like you don't, like who cares, right? Like do it the way that you want to do it. And I think that's maybe the biggest mental limiting belief, is that we have to kind of like run our family a certain way. That's just not true.
No. And I think too, speaking of the family and how to apply more time, if that's what it is, children spell love Time. And that's not mine, but that really spoke to like, how can I do things or only apply myself to the things that I must do personally? Otherwise, I want it to be with the kiddos as much time as possible with them.
You'll get a kick out of this, and maybe we can commiserate together in terms of your line about that you're still grieving with. We're thinking about getting a dog in our family right now. And I have a wife and 2 girls. They all want the dog. I've been kind of like the brakes as long as possible, trying to hold off, because I'm the one that works at home. So I know that like I'm going to be the one who has all the dog chores. So we made this kind of, the way I tried to like kind of slow down the process. I had a 8-year-old, probably 6 at the time, who was off, still coming in our bedroom at night. Right. So like, she'd go to bed and start, but then about 1 a.m. she'd crawl in. And at 1 a.m. my level of like fight, it was pretty low.
Right.
I get some parents would be like, someday they're not going to want to sleep with you. And I'm like, I would like that day to be now.
And it's okay to say that. Yes.
And so the deal was, Margot, we'll get a dog when you can sleep in your bed all night.
Yep.
And then Liv was like also the same, because then Liv was our better sleeper. But when she found out, wait a minute, when I come in the morning, the 3 of you are all here. Like, what's going on here? Like, I'm missing out on the party. So she started coming in too. And it was like this, and I would be going into like a 4-year-old bed just to get the heck out of the bedroom. And I'm 6'4", so like that didn't work out that great. So like the 2 girls had like sleep in your own bed. Well, what was Dad's like task until we get the dog? To not look at his phone as much. Okay. So that was my assignment, was like, Dad's got to stop looking at his phone. And she won't want me to say this, and Mom has to stop yelling as much. So,
it's totally relatable. Thank you for sharing.
So we all had our own sort of personal challenge, and I think we're doing quite well. Here we are in April, like, and so the dog conversation, we had like family brunch on Sunday, is starting to kind of heat up. And I don't know, I think my barriers are starting to fall.
Oh, I love it. Well, I'm a super animal lover and I love dogs, but I do like that it's something to work for too. So your kids realize like, okay, things will change. If we're going to 10X our home cleaning because of our new puppy, like how are we going to earn this?
Yeah. I love this, like the achievement roadmap, I call it. Like, whether it be, you can choose something vain, like I want to lose 10 pounds, or you can choose something like we're going to spend an hour every morning without our devices, or like whatever it is. I think it's good to give yourself like, and then when that happens, I will buy this thing, or we will get this dog, or like, they always say like, you show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think incentives are great.
We're using
it's just human psychology.
We're using the habit tracker. It's a free download, you guys, on our website, theencouragerpodcast.com. And everybody in our family is doing it. The boys are the worst, but the girls are fantastic. And whoever has the most X's on their habit tracker gets $25 at the end of the month. And I'll tell you what, like just them being able to see what and everybody has their own. So like my daughter picks it last night. We get home from youth group. It's like, oh my gosh, I think it was 9:45 by the time she had showered. She's like crawling into bed and she had just filled it out. She goes, darn it, I didn't finish my sit-ups.
Oh.
She's 8 and I go, honey, you don't have to put an X in everyone. She goes, but what if Ivy beats me? I'm like, you know what? We'll try it again the next month. But it was so funny that she was still like, I got the horse out. Like some of her goals are on there, but she was still, I love it. I love it that she just has so many good habits that are starting.
Well, and kudos to her, because I think that everything you want is on the other side of like discipline.
Yes.
Right. And that typically we probably don't actually want it as much as we think we are, as we think we do, because we're not willing to do the work.
Yes.
Right. So like I don't know if you're a person who chooses like a word for the year.
I do.
So my word is daily this year.
Oh.
And I felt like I realized I was always trying to add more and add like other things and new habits. And I was like, what if I could just do the 4 or 5 things every day? 365. And then I was like, oh shit, it's a leap year, 366. So like this year it's got to go an extra day. And so the goal this year is to work out every day, 30 minutes every day. And right now we're at day 102.
Okay.
And so far checking every day. And I think it's not even about, I don't have like a weight loss goal or like a 6-pack abs or anything, but it's like become the type of person who does what he says he will do. Right. So if I say I'm going to work out, then I'm going to work out.
Yep.
And what that does for your personal life, but what it also impacts your business. So that when you start saying something like, I think we could 10X, it doesn't become a pipe dream. No. It becomes it's not about when, it's not about how, it's just a matter of when,
Because the discipline backed it up. So good. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. I love this idea of 10X versus the 2X. It's easier. And that we can definitely accomplish it at 1% little breaks here, but it just helps your mindset, both in work and in home life, to think this through. How could I 10X this, and what would the steps be, and why it would be so much simpler than rethinking it through every single time when you already have a plan so that it's ready when you're ready to do the 10X. How can you encourage our listeners, John?
Yeah, so I always say, like, my question at the end of my podcast is, what's your superpower, the one thing you do best?
Okay.
And I always say my superpower is to get others to believe that they're capable of more. And so how would I word that as to encourage? I would say at the old Lemonly headquarters, when you came in, this will probably resonate if you're a 1%er. On the left-hand side, we had this neon sign that said better every day. And that was kind of this mentality. And I realized about 2018, we had a company retreat. And I realized a handful of our folks were maybe kind of stuck in what I call the comparison game. There was a lot of, I don't know if like, because we can swipe through Instagram at someone's highlight reel of their life. And it was a lot of like, I don't look good enough. I don't make enough. I'm not far enough in my career. We were a lot of 20, 30 somethings, and we really get caught up in that comparison game. And so I finally came up with this idea, and I was like, guys, you should only compare yourself to one person, and that's who you were yesterday. Right? So how do I be a better John than yesterday? Better dad, better CEO, better runner, better whatever labels you want to choose. That's your main mission. And so my encourager would be, the ways to do that to me, in my mind, are discipline, which we talked about, and sort of dreaming, right? Like not holding yourself down. Yeah. There's this idea of like self-fulfillment, the self-fulfillment chart on the X and Y axis. X is your self-confidence. What is your belief in your ability to do the job? And Y is your self-worth. Like, what am I worthy of, or what I deserve? And on that XY axis is like self-fulfillment. And so you might be like, I'm the best at this thing, but if you don't believe you deserve it, you just won't get any more than what you deserve. So I think about those two things. What are you great at? What do you deserve? And just try to get the 1% better.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much. Also, you dropped a resource in there, so we'll make sure to put that in our show notes. Also, if you're not on our newsletter, we will have it on the newsletter as well, so that you can go ahead and download that. This was super encouraging. Thank you. I just love the idea of switching mindsets, especially here in the Midwest, because I think we're the most humble people that keep showing up. And I would argue that probably the most who deal with imposter syndrome here, because it's just really, really thick about who Midwesterners are. And so I'd love to live outside of this area to find out, is this around the nation? But I know for us, it's very, very, very strong. Thank you so much, John, for joining us today. Until next time, encouragers, we got this because he's got us. Thanks so much for tuning in. If the Encourager podcast has helped or encouraged you in any way, please subscribe to the show and leave a 5-star review. And then help us spread the message of encouragement and hope by sharing the podcast with others. Ready to bring more organization and joy into your life? The Encourager Academy helps you harmonize your home and work life through our online course and coaching programs. Our 5-system approach, me, food, family, work, and home, tackles your biggest obstacles, offering lifetime access to video lessons and guided worksheets. Learn at your own pace with practical tools and strategies. Enroll now at encourageracademy.com and use code WeGotThis for $50 off. Are you ready for clarity and purposeful progress without the overwhelm? Join the Clarity Blueprint membership community. Transform your life with like-minded women taking small, meaningful steps twice a month. Access monthly calls, worksheets, videos, guest speakers, and a supportive community with a very affordable price. Say goodbye to chaos and hello to purposeful progress. Visit theencouragerpodcast.com and join today.
Are you concerned about tensions in the Middle East? Do you wonder where we're currently at in the biblical timeline? Are we really in the last days? Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Carl Muller with the Inside the Epicenter podcast. Every week, my co-host, best-selling author Joel Rosenberg and I answer those questions and more. You'll hear inside knowledge of our meetings with leaders at the highest levels of government in the U.S., Israel, and the Middle East, equipping you to filter the news with biblically sound insights. Find Inside the Epicenter on your favorite podcast app or go to joshuafund.com to listen and subscribe.